want to thank Rosh HaKollel Rav Horowitz for the great opportunity, the zchus, the privilege, the honor to learn together. It's a tremendous zchus that I don't take it for granted. Rav Horowitz, you should be zoiche. Lilmod ulelamed ulehagdil Torah uleha'adira. Always.
Amen.
So today we're going to ask, as we have a minhag, some questions on the Parshot Matot Massei, and then the second part, the bigger part of the Shiur, would be discussing the beauty, the virtues, so the tremendous zchus of living in Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael, ma'aloteha, sguloteha, digdukeha, kavanosea, everything that is involved in the great mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So without further ado, we start with our first riddle of the day. One who gets it right from the Ra'anana area may be zoiche to a fantastic pie, pizza pie. Don't know if you get any toppings or anything, but that you'll discuss with Rabbi Horowitz. So we have a first question. Which one of Big Day Kehuna, the special garments that Kohanim wear, is also a name of a person mentioned in Tanakh? One of the Big Day Kehuna, one of the garments worn by the Kohanim, is also a name of a person who is mentioned in the Tanakh. Who is that person, and what is it? Which Beged Kehuna are we referring to? My friends, what do you say?
Mitznefet.
I'm sorry?
Mitznefet.
Are you familiar with a person by the name of Mitznefes in the Tanakh?
I think so. Enough. It is. The name rings. Avnet, Mitznefet. I'm trying to remember the names.
I'm not familiar with Mr. Avnet or Mitznefet. I know Avner, but that's not exactly Avnet. And Mitznefet, I'm just not familiar. If you find where there is a Mr. Mitznefet in the Tanakh, please let me know.
Ma'am Achota Shel Zilpa. What? You had 4 sisters. What are the names?
The sister of Zilpa, Bilha?
No, there's what? There's a name that starts there with a ches. What's the name that starts with a ches?
Whose sister are we looking for?
Zilpa. You just said another one of the sisters. Shama Arba Chayot, nachon?
No, there's 2 sets of sisters, Rachel and Leah, Bilha and Zilpa.
Right, so it's not those sisters I'm referring to.
So what can it be? A Beged Kehuna. Simon is a Kohen, so he should know. But even one who is not a Kohen can try and answer this question. Which one of Big Day Kehuna is also a name of a person mentioned in Tanakh? The answer, my friends, in Parshot Massei. We're going to read this Shabbos. Perek Lamed Dalet Pasuk Chaf Gimel. The Nasi, the prince of the tribe of Menashe, his name was Chaniel ben Ephod. His father's name was Ephod, and Ephod is one of the garments of the Kohanim, and that is the answer to that question. And we move to the second question. In Parshas Massei, we find 42 places that Klal Yisrael went to. Which one of those places that they came to is called for a rooster? The name of a place which is called for a rooster, a tarnegol. Out of those 42 places, which one is it?
Etzion Gaver.
Kol hakavod, you get to order for yourself. In Bamidbar Lamed Gimel Lamed Hey.
That was a guess, by the way, because Gaver is chicken.
Yeah, but how do we know this? The Pasuk says, Vayisume Evrona. They traveled from the city called Evrona. Vayachanu, and they encamped in Etzion Gaver. Says the Targum Yonasan ben Uzziel, a Tana. I'm reading to his language in Hebrew. Vayisumi ma'avar vayachanu be'ir tarnegol. They encamped in a city, tarnegol, a rooster. That is the answer. I've always 2 points, other than the pizza. A third question, a little harder.
I'm going to buy you a pizza, Rav Horowitz. I'm going to buy you the pizza.
Our third question is a little hard.
You.
We know that the unintentional killer flees to the city of refuge. There, hopefully, he will be protected. But is there ever a time where an intentional killer goes to the city of refuge? He killed intentionally, and yet the din is he goes to the city of refuge. We always thought it's only for unintentional killers. What is the answer, my friends? I'm telling you, this is a bad time. It's after everybody's dinner, and therefore they don't really put all the effort in. We have to do it a little earlier in the day when they're still hungry.
יש אנשים שעוד לא אכלו.
An intentional killer who goes to the city of refuge. How can that be? What do you say, Abu Isai?
What's the question again?
We know that the unintentional killer goes to the city of refuge, but is there ever a time that the intentional killer, Rotzeach b'mezid, he is the one that has to go to the Ir Mikla, the city of refuge?
I think it's someone who is already in the city of refuge and killed someone else.
You're close. You're close. The Rambam in Hilchos Rotzeach u'Shmiras HaNefesh, Perek Hey, Halacha Yud Aleph says, if the unintentional killer, who is in the city of refuge, goes b'shoigeg, accidentally, he went for a walk on Shabbos, I don't know what he was doing, and he walked outside the borders of the city of refuge. Anyone who kills him, whether it's Goyal Hadam, whether it's any person, b'mezid, he has to go to the city of refuge. So we find an intentional killer who goes to the city of refuge. You were very close. In Parshot Matot, Klal Yisrael were commanded to kasher all their vessels. So this gives us a chance to ask a question about food, kosher. Now, boys say, how can it be that there's a person who's not allowed to eat dairy? He is also not allowed to eat fleishes. He is only allowed to eat parv. Everybody around is going to eat whatever they want. They can eat either dairy or meat, but he can only eat parv. How can that be? Two possible answers.
He didn't make a neder.
No, Nedarim, everybody's feeling 100%. They can eat whatever they want medically, and yet this person can only eat parv. He can't eat dairy or fleishik. Well, and this is two possible answers, not one.
He cannot eat basar.
I'm sorry?
The question is that he cannot eat dairy and also meat, right?
Yeah, he can only eat parv. He can only eat parv. We find two situations like this. Anyone wants to try? Take a guess.
He decided to be vegan.
Does it have to do with the kalim that he has?
If he decided to be vegan, tavo alav habracha, but that's not a halachic question.
Does it have to do with his kalim?
No, he has beautiful kelim, fleishik and milchik, new and clean. He can eat. He actually ate a little while ago, whatever he wants, but no, he can't eat. The answer is, first answer, anointed. One of his relatives passed away and he has to sit shiva, but until they're buried, he's an oinen. If a few minutes before he became an oinen, before they told him that one of his relatives passed away, he ate fleishiks. So as an oinen, one is not allowed to eat meat. So he can't eat any meat. He also can't eat any dairy because he's still fleishiks. He still has 5.5 hours to go. So this person is not allowed to eat anything but parv. That is the first answer. The other answer is inyane de yoima. We Ashkenazim, we keep the 9 days, we don't eat any meat. Erev Rosh Chodesh Av. Rosh Chodesh Av is going to start at 8 p.m. So at 7:50, a person eats some meat. Once Rosh Chodesh Av kicks in, you're not allowed to eat meat. It's the 9 days. This person can also not eat any milchiks because he just ate fleishiks. He has a few hours to wait, 6 hours to wait. And therefore he can't eat it. That's the Ashkenazi. The Sephardi, the same scenario, but that happens to him a few days later. B'shavua shechalbo, the week of Tisha B'av, when Sephardim don't eat meat. So a few minutes before the week starts, kicks in. Motzei Shabbos, Shalishudas, he ate meat. He won't be able, Motzei Shabbos kicks in, he won't be able to eat meat because it's the week of Tisha B'av. He also won't be able to eat dairy because he is still fleishiks. Those are the answers to that question, and we move to the fifth riddle. Listen to this. How is this possible? A person eats meat, basar behema, and lechatchila, he is allowed to drink milk right after, without cleaning his mouth, without eating something in between, without waiting at all. He is 100% healthy. He ate basar behema, and he is able to drink milk immediately without any wait, without drinking, without eating in between. How is this possible?
He has milk from a cow that was taken out of the mother of a cow.
Ben Pakua.
Biduk.
How is Ben Pakua going to help us? You want the Ben Pakua itself to be parv, or you want the milk from the Ben Pakua to be parv? Both are incorrect, by the way, but which one would you choose?
I would say the meat of the Ben Pakua.
Is
the meat.
Fleshik. Yochlu anovi ve'yisbal.
Nachon. But the milk is also fleshik.
Why would that be? You have documentation to say that.
I think the milk, if you drink the milk out of the udders of a Ben Pakua, then the milk inside the Ben Pakua is also fleshik.
Is this a halacha that appears in Shulchan Aruch?
Mismachim.
Of course. It's a big chiddush. It's a big chiddush found in the Donkey Tshuva and Yoredea Pei Tes Seif Aleph Pinchas Yitzchak as well and Chelek Tes, and they maintain that if one eats basar behema tumeya, non-kosher, he ate chazir, Rachmana litzlan, but he ate chazir, he is allowed lechatchila to drink milk right after that. You have to separate meat and milk after you eat something kosher, but if it's not kosher, it was never said that you have to separate between the two. So after eating basar behema tmeya, non-kosher, one would be able to drink lechatchila, milk, immediately, and that is the answer to that question. Now we move to a strange question. Where do we find the laundry in Parshot Matot? Not in your laundry room. In Parshot Matot, where do we find laundry? It's not such a big parsha. I could have said Matos or Massei. I'm just, I'm narrowing it down to Parshot Matot. Where do we find the laundry in Parshot Matot?
In the laundry room.
When was the last time you met Parshot Matot in the laundry room?
When was the last time I went in the laundry room?
When was the last time you went to Maseches Nedorim? Giving you a hint.
No. Oh, of course. Oh, now I know.
Parshas Matot, Perek Lamed Hey, Pasuk Gimel. The Torah is talking about the cities of the Levim. Vehayu he'arim lahem lasheves, umigrashehem yiyu lebehemtam, velirchusham, ulechol chayasam. Did you hear the double language? The Torah says, these cities that the Kohanim, that the Levim will get shall be theirs for dwellings, and their open space shall be for their cattle. That's the behema. Their property, that's the rechush. And the pasuk ends by saying, ulechol chayasam. What is chaya? Chaya is a behema. It's double language. The Torah says that these cities will be for the behema and for the chaya. Isn't that double language? Redundant. The Gemara asks this question in Nedorim Pei Aleph Amud Aleph. Chaya bichlal behema. So why do you have to say both? Because I'll say chayasam ze kol tzorcheim, all their needs. Ask the Gemara, and why minhu? What does that mean? All their needs? Kvisa, laundry. So the words ulechol chayasam refers to laundry. Laundry in Parshot Matot, a totally different type of question now. Seventh riddle of the day. We have Tariyag mitzvahs, 613 mitzvahs. What is the first mitzvah a Jew was ever commanded to fulfill?
Revu.
Who was commanded on that mitzvah?
It was not a Jew. Adam was not a Jew.
Was Adam Jewish?
I hope so.
Why?
He's not known to be Jewish.
Was it then Bris Milah? Was that
Bris Milah is the right person, but the wrong mitzvah.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
He was told to go to Eretz Yisrael.
Aha! I have gold, 2 points from Chutz La'aretz. Parshas Lech Lecha, we have a friend from Chicago. Parshas Lech Lecha, HaKadosh Baruch Hu commands Avraham Avinu, Lech Lecha me'artzecha u'mimoladcha. We know there's a machlokes whether Avraham Avinu had a din of a ben Noach or a Jew, but if we'll take the side that he had a status, a halachic status of a Jew, this will be the first mitzvah a Jew, an individual, was ever commanded. Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, go to the land. So what is the connection to Parshas Massei? We just quoted a pasuk from Parshas Lech Lecha. Because in our Parsha, Parshas Massei, Lamed Gimel pasuk Nun Gimel, the pasuk says, "Vehorashtem es haaretz v'yishavtem ba, ki lochem nosati es haaretz lareshes oisa." You shall clear out the land and settle in it, for I have given you the land to occupy it. The Ramban and this pasuk says, I'm quoting your language of the Ramban. Al daiti, it is my opinion. Zu mitzvahs aseh hi. This is a positive commandment from the Torah. Yetzave oisam sheyeshvu ba'aretz. HaKadosh Baruch Hu here commands us here to settle the land. Kihu nesana lahem, because he has given it to us. And then he adds 4 very important words. Velo yimasu benachlas Hashem. Don't reject this unbelievable gift that we receive from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So this gives us a chance to speak about Eretz Yisrael, the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. This is where we find it in Parshas Massei. But first, why is this land called Eretz Yisrael? Who is Yisrael? Yisrael is Yaakov. Yaakov is the third. Why don't you call it Eretz Avraham? Eretz Yitzchak. Why Eretz Yisrael? Because if it would have been called Eretz Avraham, you know what would happen? Our cousins, Ishmael, would come and say, whoa, wait a second. You're calling it Eretz Avraham. We have a part in that Eretz as well. It's part of our land as well. After all, we come from Avraham. If you would call it Eretz Yitzchak, the Esav would come and say, wait a second. Yitzchak is our father. We have a share in it as well. It is called Eretz Yisrael, Eretz of Yaakov, because it was only given to Bnei Yaakov, to the 12 tribes, to Klal Yisrael, and no one can share any part of it. It is ours. Sefer Shemois.
I didn't understand. So why isn't it Bnei Yaakov? Why is it Bnei Yisrael?
Well, we know that Yaakov and Yisrael switched, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu said in Parshas Vayishlach, no more will you be called Yaakov, your name will be called Yisrael. So now Yisrael represents Yaakov, and therefore it is called Eretz Yisrael.
Yeah, but after that he was called Yaakov. After that he was called Yaakov. After he wrestled with the angel, he was called Yaakov again. There were different times he was called Yisrael and Yaakov.
Correct. And we've spoken about that extensively in some recordings, different understandings, Ramban and others. And maybe if we'll have time today, we'll go back to it at the end of the Pasha. But in brief, 2 short ideas. When it's talking to Klal Yisrael, it's Yisrael. When it's talking to the individual, it's Yaakov. When it's talking about challenging times, it's Yaakov. When it's talking about great successes, it's Yisrael. In Sefer Shemois Perek Yud Beis Pasuk Chafei, the pasuk says, "Vehaya ki savo el haaretz asher yiten Hashem lachem," and it would be when you come to the land. Again, 1 chapter later, "Vehaya ki yaviacha Hashem el eretz haknani," when HaKadosh Baruch Hu will bring you to the land. We have a rule. The word "vehaya" always denotes simcha. You're going to find it in so many psukim when HaKadosh Baruch Hu discusses Eretz Yisrael, the word "vehaya," because there is no greater simcha than coming to the land. In fact, Orach Chaim HaKodesh. At the beginning of Parshas Kisavo, "Vehaya kisavo el haaretz," says the Orach Chaim HaKodesh. Why does it say "vehaya"? Loshon simcha. It's a language of simcha. Lehair, to tell you, she'en lismoach ela v'yeshivas haaretz. Want to have some simcha in your life? Look at the opportunity, the zchus, to fulfill the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. There is no other simcha, says the Orach Chaim HaKodesh, but the simcha of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. In our Parsha, in Parshas Massei, the Torah discusses the borders of Eretz Yisrael. Listen how many times the Torah repeats itself this word, Vehaya. Vehaya lachem pe'as negev, from the Midbar Tzin al yedei Edom. Vehaya lachem gvul negev. The Torah continues later, Vehaya lachem hayam hagadol ugvul zeh. The borders, as the Torah describes, Vehaya, 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 Vehaya. Vehaya is the Lashon Simcha. You're talking about Eretz Yisrael. You have to put a smile on. Anything that has to do with Eretz Yisrael is Simcha. You're coming close to Eretz Yisrael. In Dvorim, Chav Zayin, the Pasuk says, Vehaya bayom asher tavu es hayarden, el haaretz asher Hashem Elokecha no yiselach. When you cross the Jordan River, coming to Eretz Yisrael, again the word Vehaya. Right after that, two psukim later, Vehaya be'ovrechem es hayarden. Vehaya is a lashon of Simcha. As opposed to that, Parshas Kisavoy perek chavav pasukei and Dvorim, the pasuk says, Vayered Mitzrayma. Vayagor sham bimsei me'at. We know this pasuk from the Haggadah. Vayehi sham legoy gadol atzum verav. Here the Torah doesn't use the language of Vehaya, rather Vayehi, because Vayehi is lashon tsar. Because if we dwell in chutz laaretz chalela, that is the lashon of tsar. So we find there's nothing greater, the derived happiness. The Klal Yisrael, this mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, and yet. Brochos Dafei Amud Aleph, a famous Ma'amar of Chazal, Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave three good gifts to Klal Yisrael. Ve'kulan lo nitnan ela al yedei yisurim. And they all come to us. We acquire these gifts by afflictions, by yisurim. They are Torah and Eretz Yisrael and Olam Haba. But wait a second. We're saying Eretz Yisrael, such simcha. Chazal say it corresponds to all the mitzvahs. So why do we have to acquire it through suffering? If you really want us to enjoy this mitzvah, just give it to us without any suffering included. What does it have to be a package deal? Here, take the land. You're going to get some suffering too. There's a beautiful Michtav Me'Eliyahu. Abdesler in Chelek Hey, page 329, says such a sweet thing. A person comes to Eretz Yisrael. Eretz Yisrael? In Baba Basra Daf Kuf Nun Ches Amud Beis, the Gemara says that the ear in Eretz Yisrael makes one wiser. So you know what happens? He starts having so many Chidushei Torah. It just keeps pouring out of him. And there is a slight chashash that he may become arrogant. After all, he looks at all his friends in Chutz La'aretz, and they don't have this type of Chidushim. He is much smarter now than he ever was. And therefore, to balance things out, we don't want to be arrogant. That's terrible midah. So Kodesh Baruch Hu gives a little suffering just to balance things out, so you don't become too haughty. That is why Eretz Yisrael is acquired through Yisurim, and we'll get to that a little later. The idea that the air in Eretz Yisrael makes one wiser. There is a unknown, for some reason, and definitely underrated Rashi in Parshas Boy. Everybody knows that Rashi in Dvorim, where Rashi says, "Ve'hayu be'enecha kachadoshim." You have to treat Divrei Torah as if they're new, fresh, every single day. Get excited. Everybody knows this. But Rashi is the same Rashi, and he says the same thing about Eretz Yisrael. Perek Yud Gimel Pasuk Yud Aleph Parshas Boy. The Torah says, "Ve'haya." Again, Lashon Simcha. V'haya ki yaviach Hashem el Eretz HaKnani, asher nishba lach, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu brings you to the land, as He swore to you, v'lavosecha, and to your forefathers, unesana lach, and He will give it to you. Rashi says, unesana lach, and He will give you the land. Teheh be'einecha ke'ilu nitna lecha boy bayoim. You have to view Eretz Yisrael every single day, as if you got it today. Ve'al tehi be'einecha ki yerushas avois. Don't treat it as if it's something that you got in Yerusha, a gift that you got many years ago. Don't really look at it every single day. You don't get excited. This is by me for many generations. No, says Rashi. Every morning when you get up in Eretz Yisrael, you have to open the window, look outside and say, wow, I am zoichet to live in a place where Moshe Rabbeinu was not zoichet. Aaron HaKohen was not zoichet, and I am here. And you have to be excited about this land every single day. This is Rashi. The same Rashi that we all know about the Torah, that we try to be excited every single day. It's the same Rashi, the same type of words. There is a seems to be a harsh statement in Chazal. Ksubis Kuf Yuda Mudbeis. Listen to this. Also, it's known, but let's try to figure out what it really means. Chazal say, anyone who dwells in Eretz Yisrael, Kol Hadar be'Eretz Yisrael, Doime kemisha yeshlo eloka. It's as if he has a God. V'chol Hadar b'chutz ha'aretz, but one who dwells outside the land, Doime kemisha en lo eloka. It's as if he doesn't have a God. Chas v'sholom.
What?
Startling. Startling. How in the world
Sure
can we understand it? There's a guy who lives in the world. He's shomer Torah mitzvahs. He davens not 3 times a day, he davens 7 times a day.
שנייה, רב ארלה, שנייה. הרב פסן, שנייה. רב דוד,
Yeah.
put your thing on mute. Put your thing on mute. Sorry. Okay.
So how can we understand this startling statement? We have a Yid who lives in Chutz La'aretz. It's Mekayim, shomer Torah mitzvahs. He davens many times a day with all the kavanos possible. He only eats kosher, the best hechsherim. He learns, not 24 hours a day, 25 hours a day. He gets up 1 hour earlier. And yet, Chazal say, if he dwells in Chutz La'aretz, doime kemisha en lo eloka, as if he doesn't have a God. How is this possible? So there's a few ways to try and answer that. In Chutz La'aretz, Chazal say there is no nevuah. So if you don't have direct communication with a Kodesh Baruch Hu, one who lives in Chutz La'aretz cannot get nevuah. It's as if you don't have a God because you can't communicate with him. In Eretz Yisrael, there is nevuah. So it's kemisha yashlo eloka. It's as if you have a God because you have a way, hopefully you'll get there, to have the nevuah, to have prophecy. That's one way. There's a sefer called Otzros Eretz Chemda. And in page 108, he calculates how many times the Torah mentions the mitzvahs of Eretz Yisrael, inherit the land, or a promise that I will give you the land. I swore to your forefathers. You won't believe it. You know how many times the Kodesh Baruch Hu keeps mentioning Eretz Yisrael in his Torah? 86 times! Unbelievable. But wait a second. Oh, 86 is a special number. 86 has a numerical value of Elokim, Aleph and Lamed, Hey, and Yud and Mem. Maybe that's why Chazal say one who lives in Chutz La'aretz, it's as if he doesn't have a God, because this is a mitzvah, that is if HaKadosh Baruch Hu signed his name on it. Come, I want you to come to my land. You know who's commanding you? Elokim. I'm signing my name on it. I'm going to repeat it again, over and over, 86 times, so you get it. It's me asking you to come. So on this specific mitzvah, when HaKadosh Baruch Hu signed his name, and one as if ignores it, it doesn't come. It's as if kemi, as if she'en lo eloka. We're not talking about a person who can't come for medical reasons or any other reason, but a person who can come. Maybe that's what Chazal meant. But Chazal adds something else, not less startling. Not only kemi she'en lo eloka, as if he doesn't have a God, Chazal also say, kemi she'oived avodah zara. Kemi she'oived avodah zara. Ayin zayin. It's as if he serves other gods. How can you explain that? The Chofetz Chaim wrote a sefer called Sefer HaMitzvos HaKotzer. This sefer is counting the mitzvahs that apply b'zman hazeh. We have 613 mitzvahs. Not all of them apply to everybody. Not all of them apply b'zman hazeh. How many positive mitzvahs do we have today that we can fulfill? The Chofetz Chaim counts 77 mitzvahs essay. 77 positive mitzvahs. Maybe this is the trick. This is the answer. Chazal say, Kemi she'oived is as if he serves Ayin Zayin. We normally read it Avodah Zarah. Ayin Zayin is 77 in Gematria. Ayin is 77, Zayin is 7. One who lives in Chutz La'aretz, it's as if he serves Ayin Zayin, only 77 mitzvahs. But wait, what happens when one comes to Eretz Yisrael? There are more mitzvahs here. Mitzvahs at Luyos Baaretz, mitzvahs that you can only fulfill in Eretz Yisrael. There are, guess how many? 26 mitzvahs like that. What is 26? It's the numerical value of Yud Kei Vav Kei, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Therefore, Chazal say, if you live in Chutz La'aretz, doime kemi she'oived Ayin Zayin. It's as if you serve Ayin Zayin, 77 mitzvahs only. Not avodah zarah, chalila. But if you come to Eretz Yisrael, Kemisha Yeshlo Eloka, as if you have a God because you add another 26 and 26. It's the name of Hashem. Maybe that is how we can understand it and make it a little more digestible. The Maharami Rutenberg, one of the Rishonim, Shar Beis, Kafres and Ayin Tes. The Mabit, one of the Rishonim. The Rechav Das, Obadiah Yosef in Chele Gimel, Samech Tes, page 219. They say, and Rechav Das quotes these Rishonim, that the mitzvah of sitting in Eretz Yisrael, dwelling in Eretz Yisrael, Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is nothing comes close to it because it corresponds. It has the weight corresponding to all the mitzvahs, especially when one comes here in order to fulfill the mitzvah and to fulfill all the mitzvahs that can only be fulfilled in Eretz Yisrael. And therefore they say, even if his parents command him, don't go to Eretz Yisrael, one should not listen to them. So I was asked an interesting question. A guy from the States calls me and he says, I don't know what to tell my father. What should I tell him? I want to come to Eretz Yisrael. My father says no. But my father has a very good argument. He says it's a matter of pikuach nefesh for you. Not that he's an old father and he's dying and it's a pikuach nefesh for his father. He says it's a pikuach nefesh shaila for you. And the son asks him, but why is that? So the father says it's very simple. The Torah says, for the merit of kibud av, what do when you honor your parents? You earn longevity. Leman ya'arichun yamecha. The Torah repeats it twice in Parshas Yisro and Parshas Vayesrama. So this father says to his son, listen, we have a rule. Miklal hen ata shomei alav. From the positive, you can hear the negative. If, when you honor your parents, you're going to be rewarded with longevity, that means if you don't, you'll be rewarded as if with the opposite of longevity. If you go to Eretz Yisrael, you won't be able to honor me. So therefore, it's a pikuach nefesh shaila for you. You can't go. Pikuach nefesh obviously overrides all the mitzvahs in the Torah except for the 3 cardinal sins. We know that. So this kid calls me and says, what do I do? What do I say to my father? I told him, don't worry. Open up a Mechilta. Mechilta de Reb Shimon Bar Yochai. Perek Chaf. Listen to a language of a Mechilta. It's a big pele. The Pasuk says, Leman ya'arichun yamecha al ha'adama. Chazal say, where will you have longevity? Al ha'adama, on the land that I gave you, says HaKadosh Baruch Hu, velo b'goila, velo b'toisha voice, and not where you decided to dwell. The Torah, in essence, is promising longevity to one who honors his parents in Eretz Yisrael. This is repeated in Medrash Tanoim and Dvorim Perek Hey, when the Torah says again, Al ha'adama asher Hashem Elokecha noisen lach, and Chazal say, Kshe'atem al ha'adama yesh arichus yomim v'yesh toiva mitzuya. When you are dwelling in the land, there is longevity and great other benefits associated. Ha'einan mitzuyin lo b'goyla v'lo b'toishavos, but this is not found in the galus. The reward for this mitzvah, kibud avim, is found in Eretz Yisrael. So I told him, you have now what to answer your father. But I was asked another very interesting question. A person who flies over Eretz Yisrael, he's going from Syria down to Egypt. He's going from Jordan all the way to Europe or to the States. Do you fulfill the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael when you're flying over the land? Boisai, let's hear your opinion on this one. What do you think? Do you fulfill the mitzvah when you're flying over the land?
It says Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, to sit in Israel, not to fly.
And who says that when you're in the airspace of a country, it's not considered that you're in that country? Look, when one flies, he goes on a 10, 12-hour ride. This happens all the time. When do you daven? You left the house early morning, you daven Shachris. When do you daven Mincha? It goes according to where you are. You open up the window on the plane and you look, and if it's already evening, you daven ma'ariv. If not, you don't. So this has to do with the air of where you're traveling over. So what do you say, Abba Yisrael? Do you fulfill the mitzvah when you're flying over Eretz Yisrael?
You have no
I
intent
think it's
when you're
like
flying over Eretz Yisrael to be living in Eretz Yisrael. You don't have the right kavana.
And what if you do have the right kavanah?
I think if I could, it's like when you it says Al Ha'adama Asher Natan Lecha, right? So Al Ha'adama, it's not Al Ha'adama, it's like Al Hashamayim when you fly.
But that's relevant to the reward for the mitzvah of Kibud Av Ha'em. The pasuk doesn't say Ala Adama regarding the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. So let's try to explore this. There's a Gemara in Yerushalmi in Sanhedrin Perek Yud Halacha Vav, and the Gemara has a suffix. In Parshot Matot we learn about Ir Hanidachas, a city where, unfortunately, the people there serve the Avodah Zarah. You have to kill them all. You have to kill all the behemoths, and you have to burn all the assets. But the Gemara wants to know, what about the birds flying in the air, the airspace of that city? Are they included in that or not? Do you have to burn them or not? And it seems that the suffix is, or the birds flying above 10 tfachim, considered residents of the city, or maybe not. Maybe since they're not on the ground of the city, they are not chayav and sreifa. We don't have to execute them. So that's not going to help us because it's left over there with a question mark. But it seems that is our question. In Makos, back to Bavli, in Makos, Daf Yud Beis, Amud Beis, we learn. And this again is connected to our Parshas, Parshas Shavua, the unintentional killer. If he runs to the city of refuge, and he's running, but the guy who wants to kill him is right behind him, he gets so tired, so he gets close to the border and he jumps on a tree. The trunk of the tree is outside the border of the city of refuge, but the branches are hovering over the border and they're inside the city of refuge. So our friend, the unintentional killer, is on the branches in the airspace of the city of refuge, and the Gemara says, the city of refuge absorbed. It's considered as if he is in the city. You see that the airspace of the place is counted as if you're on the ground. So too by us. Maybe we should say that one who is in the air of Eretz Yisrael, it's as if he is on the ground of Eretz Yisrael and he fulfills the mitzvah of Yishuv Yisrael. However, maybe we can reject this. Maybe it only works when you're sitting on the branch of the tree because that's a place where you can last, you can exist, you can stay there. So it's considered as if you're in the city of refuge, but not where you're in the air. How long do you think you'll be able to hang out? Hovering over in the air of Eretz Yisrael. Also, I think what you said before is correct. Regarding this mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, the Torah says, V'yishavtem ba. That's the pasuk we started with. V'yishavtem ba. You should sit in it. You don't sit in the air. Also, there's no tchumin. We know that above 10 tfachim, it's a different domain. So maybe the mitzvah is not fulfilled when you're in a different domain. More than that. There are many opinions that the reason for the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is in order to be able to fulfill the mitzvahs atluyos ba'aretz, those mitzvahs which you can only fulfill in Eretz Yisrael. Shmita, Tumas, and Ma'asos. So when you're on the plane, you can't fulfill them. If you can't fulfill them, you didn't fulfill the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Air is not karka, is not the ground. Air is patuf ha'maiser. And I think from here it's proven that the air of Eretz Yisrael doesn't have the kedusha of Eretz Yisrael. Maybe it doesn't even have the name of Eretz Yisrael. Maybe we can find a remes to that in Bamidbar Lamed Gimel Nun Hey in our Parsha. The Pasuk says, "Ve'im lo torishu es yoshvei haaretz." People who are here are called yoshvei, those who dwell, who sit in the land. There's a pasuk in Ezra Perek Dalet Pasuk Vav regarding Malchus Achashverosh. They wrote Sitna al yoshvei Yehuda veYerushalayim. You see that people who dwell in Eretz Yisrael, Yoshvei Haaretz, Yoshvei Yehuda, Yoshvei Yerushalayim. It doesn't say Anshei Haaretz. It doesn't say those who hang out in the air of Yehuda v'Yerushalayim. But therefore, I think that one who flies over Eretz Yisrael is not fulfilling the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael.
Someone just wrote a few minutes before that the mitzvah is to walk 4 amot, dalet amot into the land, and not just fly over it. So what can that be considered?
There is a mitzvah that one fulfills when he walks 4 amos. Soon we'll get to it. You'll be very surprised. Some great revelations. But walking on the ground is not the same as flying in the air. I don't think you can equate the two. Chazal in 2 places in Tanis Daf Zayin Amud Aleph and Makos Daf Yud Amud Aleph say that one who learns Torah alone, not with a chavusa, becomes foolish. He forgets his Torah and becomes foolish. That is what Chazal say. There's an amazing chidush of the Yavitz in his Hakdama to the Siddur, page 33. The Artzos HaChaim, Reb Chaim Palagi, Sha'ar Dalet Ois Yud Aleph, and they both say, that's true. In Chutz La'aretz, but in Eretz Yisrael, one can learn on his own and he will not become foolish. He will not lose his Torah. Why? Because in Eretz Yisrael, we said before, the air makes you wiser. It balances things out. On one hand, you should always learn with the chavusa. Yeah, but you have the air here that makes you wiser. In Eretz Yisrael, this doesn't apply, and that's a tremendous chiddush. I once actually asked Maran Reb Chaim Kanievsky Shlita, can we rely on this Reb Chaim Palagi and Yavitz and learn alone in Eretz Yisrael? Reb Chaim says, if you're a Talmid Chochem, yeah. I said, so you can rely on it? So Reb Chaim told me, try it and let me know. So how great is the Koyach of Eretz Yisrael? It's amazing medrash. The Reishi Saba. Pasha Ein Vav, or his base, Yaakov Avinu was preparing to meet his brother Esav after many years. And the Torah says, Vayira Yaakov me'od, Yeser Loi. Yaakov was very afraid. The Medrash asks, why are you afraid? Aren't you the same Yaakov that in Parshas Vayetze said, Im Lavan Garti, Betariag Mitzvos Shamarti, I kept 612 mitzvahs, 613 mitzvahs. What are you afraid of? Arasha Merusha, more than that. Didn't HaKadosh Baruch Hu promise you? I will be with you. I will watch over you. Don't worry. I will bring you back. So Yaakov Avinu, you don't trust the promise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu? What are you so worried about? What are you afraid of? Listen to a language of the Medrash. Omar Yaakov, Kol Hashanim Halalu, Esav Yoshev be'Eretz Yisrael. Toimar Shu Ba'alai Mikoach Yeshivas Eretz Yisrael. Yes, I'm a big tzaddik. I kept 613 mitzvahs. I have a promise from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but Esav has something that I don't have. Esav has the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. All those years I was outside the land. He has this unbelievable mitzvah. We said before, it corresponds to all the other mitzvahs. He has tremendous weight. Maybe he's coming to fight me with the merit of the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Let's analyze this. You're right. He has a mitzvah. Amazing mitzvah. Amazing mitzvah. Esav Arasha, you think he fulfills mitzvahs with kavanah? We paskin mitzvahs sichos kavanah. Mitzvahs require kavanah. Esav has no intention whatsoever for the mitzvah. But he does it by default because he lives in Eretz Yisrael. With that, Yaakov Avinu, you're afraid that Esav will be able to beat you? You see the koyach? The unbelievable koyach of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. Chazal add there as well that he was afraid that Esav was fulfilling the mitzvah of Kibud Av all those years. Yaakov Avinu wasn't able to. And from the koyach of these 2 mitzvahs, Yaakov Avinu was worried maybe Esav will be able to beat him. So we mentioned just a few minutes ago, there's another mitzvah associated with Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, and that is every time a person walks 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael, he fulfills a mitzvah. There's a Gemara in Sochim Daf Ches Amud Aleph. Shluchei mitzvah eina nizoiki. A person who is on his way to do a mitzvah will not be harmed. Special promise. In Maseches Ksubis Daf Kuf Yud Aleph is where we learn that one who walks 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael is doing a mitzvah. Muftach lo shu ben ha'olam haba. He is assured that he goes to the world to come. If we combine these two sources, perhaps we can say, anytime you walk in Eretz Yisrael, you're involved in a mitzvah. Therefore, every time you walk in Eretz Yisrael, you are sheltered, you're protected. If it's a mitzvah, and shluchei mitzvah, one who's on his way to do a mitzvah, is protected, you're always protected in Eretz Yisrael. Unless, a person on his way to do a mitzvah can't stand in the middle of the highway and say, nothing's going to happen to me. Guess what? He may be run over by the next truck or bus. But if there's not a place called Shchicha Hezeka, where there's major sakana, potentially we should say that anytime you walk in Eretz Yisrael, you're protected. I asked this Shabbat to Chaim Kanievsky, and he says, yes. One who is a shomer mitzvahs, this is true. So I told the Chaim Rebbe, based on that, I understand a different Gemara. One page later, Daf Ches Amud Beis, the Gemara has a suffix. We know that shluchei mitzvah are not harmed on the way to do a mitzvah, but the Gemara wants to know, but what about on the way back? Shluchei mitzvah ein anizoikim behalichason, on the way to do the mitzvah. What about b'chazirason, when they come back from the mitzvah? Do they still have this layer of protection? Rav, who was asked this question, says, Lo yadana, I don't know. Rabbi Lazar was asked this question, and he said, Shluchei mitzvah ein anizokim, lo behalichason, velo b'chazirason. Shluchei mitzvah will not be harmed. They are protected both on the way to do the mitzvah and on the way back from the mitzvah. What's going on here? Why doesn't Rav know? How come Rabbi Lazar does know? So I told the Chaim, perhaps we can say, where did Rav live? Rav lived in Bavel. Rav was asked, his yeshiva bachurim, they come back at night from yeshiva. It's dangerous. Mazikim, are they protected? And Rav says, I don't know. I don't know why you're coming back home. Are you going back home so you'll be able to eat and sleep, so you'll have koyach tomorrow to learn more Torah? Or you're going back home because you're hungry, because you're tired? I don't know. And if you're just going back home because you're hungry and tired, there's no mitzvah associated with that, and therefore I don't know if you're protected. I don't think you're protected, but I don't know why you're going back. But Rabbi Lazar, who lived in Eretz Yisrael, he said, yes, you're always protected. I don't care why you're going back home. It doesn't make a difference what the reason is. Because when you're walking in Eretz Yisrael, it's a mitzvah on its own. So it doesn't make a difference what your intentions are. You're going home because you're tired. What's the difference? You're still involved in a mitzvah. And therefore he said yes, because he lived in Eretz Yisrael. And Eretz Yisrael, in fact, one is protected on his way to do the mitzvah and on the way back.
I don't understand.
Reb Chaim said, Yofe, give us come. I once asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky, this mitzvah of 4 amos, what about when I'm driving my car? Let's say I live in Haifa, I drive to Eilat every single day, back and forth. I'm going to work. You still get this mitzvah of 4 amos every time you go into your air-conditioned car and you're listening to music on the way. And Reb Chaim said to me, he actually wrote to me 3 words. Kiddushin daf lamed gimel amud beis. The Gemara uses the language. Roichev kemehalech dami. One who rides a donkey is counted is called like a person who is walking. That's the case. When you're driving your car, it's like you're walking. And yes, you get the mitzvah. So I said, Reb, I want to take it a notch up. I want to take it another step forward. I'm going to go now swimming in my backyard. Back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. Every 4 amos is a mitzvah. And Reb Chaim said, yes. Rabbi said, do you understand the tremendous virtue of living in Eretz Yisrael? What a schus! Everything you do, you're just racking up the mitzvahs. Listen to this shayla I once asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky. A guy from Chutz La'aretz comes to Eretz Yisrael for Yontif, comes for Sukkot. Second day of Yontif, in the middle of the day, he looks around, he says, what, am I crazy to go back? I'm staying! And he becomes a Ben Eretz Yisrael. He changes his status. He says, I'm no longer a chutznik. I am a resident of Eretz Yisrael. Great. This is in the middle of his second day of Yontif. Does he have to do Havdalah right now? Remember, just last night he did Kiddush for the second day of Yontif. All his friends are going to do Havdalah tonight. Does he have to do Havdalah right now and to put on tefillin? Just 2 hours ago he finished Chachris of Yontif, but he's calling himself a Ben Eretz Yisrael. So does he have to put on tefillin? He still didn't put on tefillin today. It's a suchag, and he has to put on tefillin. Remember, last night he did Kiddush. Now we'll tell him to do Havdalah in the middle of the day. Reb Chaim wrote to me in a letter, yes, that is what the Chazon Ish instructed. That's how it works. In the middle of the day, you can change your halachic status. Fine. A few months later, I asked Reb Chaim, what about the reverse? An Israeli who goes to Chutz La'aretz, second day of Yom Tov, which is to him, is Isuchad, which means, let's say it's midday. 2 hours ago, he just took off the tefillin that he put on for Shachis. Last night, he did Havdalah. All his friends in Chutz La'aretz did Kiddush, he did Havdalah. And then in the middle of the day, somebody comes to him and offers him an offer he cannot refuse. He gets the best position in the world, and he says, you know what, I'm staying. I'm not going back to Eretz Yisrael. Lo aleinu. Does his halachic status change as well in the middle of the day, which means now for the next 6-8 hours, he's going to have to keep Yom Tov. And Mincha, he's going to have to daven Mincha of Yom Tov, even though Shachris was a Shachris of a weekday. And in the evening, he will have to say Havdalah again. Reb Chaim says to me, yes, the halachic status can change in the middle of the day. But then he pauses, he looks at me, and he says, I'm going to say it the way he said it in Hebrew. Aval hu meshuga. Patu mikol ha-mitzvahs. But he's crazy, and so therefore he's exempt from all the mitzvahs. One who is a fool is exempt from all the mitzvahs. So I smiled, and everybody cracked up in the room. But then I asked him, so Rebbe, lemaisa, does he need to do Kiddush now in the middle of the Yom Tov? Because he did Havdalah last night, but now you're calling it his Yom Tov. Reb Chaim looks at me and he says to me, I told you. He is pato mikol ha-mitzvahs. He's exempt from all the mitzvahs. He's a shoite. He's a meshuga. That's what the Chaim told me. I want to share with you a few other questions that I asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky. There's a doctor, one of the countries in Chutz La'aretz, Shomer Torah Mitzvahs, considered one of the big experts in what he does, and Baruch Hashem, very, very well to do. He has a son in Eretz Yisrael who has a whole yeshiva. Many, many people sit and learn in that yeshiva. And he is basically the only sponsor of this place. But now suddenly he has this desire. He wants to come to Eretz Yisrael. But he says, if I come to Eretz Yisrael, I won't be able to support my son's yeshiva. In the yeshiva, there are 65 students. He's the only supporter. Is he allowed to stop the support? Talmud Torah de Rabbim, is there anything that comes close to that? And if he is allowed, should we recommend that he comes? Or maybe the tremendous chus of Achzakas Torah of so many students is better. Especially nowadays when the yeshivas are in dire states. Reb Chaim writes to me, one word, Ya'aleh. You should come to Eretz Yisrael. So the way it works with the Chaim many times that he writes in his abbreviated fashion, and then I write to him, Rebbe, is this and this the reason you're saying what you're saying? So this is what I did, and this is what I came up with. Mitzvahs Yishuv Eretz Yisrael, according to Reb Chaim, who holds like the Chazon Ish's uncle, who holds like the Gaon Mevina, who holds like the Ramban we saw before, is a positive mitzvah from the Torah that applies Bezman Hazeh. So that is called Vadai, certain. As soon as you land in Ben Gurion, you're starting to fulfill the mitzvah. And if you stay in Chutz La'aretz, who says you're going to still continue to have the same amounts of money you always had? In Beit Daf Tes Zayin we learn a person's income is decreed on Rosh Hashanah. Did you go upstairs on Rosh Hashanah and find out in the accounting department what exactly is stored for you for this coming year? No, you don't. You're not about a boss on Parnasa. Who says maybe you'll come to Eretz Yisrael and you'll win the lottery? You'll have double the Parnasa. You'll be able to open up another yeshiva. So what you have is a vadai, certainty. That is Yishuv Eretz Yisrael. What you have, on the other hand, is a suffix. The suffix is Parnasa. You have no idea. And therefore, when we have vadai and suffix, you catch the vadai. And you leave the suffix. More than that. According to this line of thought, the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is placed on your shoulders. And you should fulfill the mitzvahs that you are obligated to fulfill, and then go and find other mitzvahs which you're not obligated to fulfill. There's no mitzvah in the Taryag that we are familiar with that says, thou shalt find a yeshiva and sponsor 65 students in Eretz Yisrael or anywhere. It's beautiful to do. If you have the money, Great. But do you have to go to work just to increase the money that you get in order to give more tzedakah and support Torah? No. And if in fact he goes to Eretz Yisrael and he really doesn't make so much money like he used to, it's not going to be any claim on him from Shamayim. It's a Kodesh Baruch Hu who gave him a little less. And if a Kodesh Baruch Hu wants this yeshiva to continue, the Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to find other sponsors. And if a Kodesh Baruch Hu doesn't like this yeshiva and doesn't want to continue, even if he stays in Chutz La'aretz, a Kodesh Baruch Hu can close down the place. Comes out that one should not do cheshbonos shamayim. One just do what he needs to do. I asked the Prime, is this the reason you're saying what you're saying? And he said, yes. I once was asked by a Hasidic Rebbe in New York, who has 80 families. He is their shepherd. And he said, I want to come to Eretz Yisrael. This urge, but I have 80 families. They are my flock. They listen to me. I am like their father, like a shepherd. I have a great responsibility. Am I allowed to leave my congregation? So I go to the Reb Chaim, and the Reb Chaim says to me, Kulam ya'alu, shagam hachasidim shelo ya'alu, kulam ya'alu, let everybody come. I said, Rebbe, that's not the question. They're not coming. Meanwhile, it's only the Rebbe. Should he come? And Reb Chaim said, Ya'aleh, Ya'aleh. Yes, he should come. Listen to this. I once asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky. A rabbi was involved in Kyiv, a small town, USA. He is the only school, he is the only shul in town. And he really, really wants to come to Eretz Yisrael now. But if he comes, there's no more Yiddishkeit in that place. Yiddishkeit will collapse. He's the only school, the only shul. They will close down. There's no more Yiddishkeit. Can he come? Should he come? Is he allowed to come? Reb Chaim writes 2 words. Mitzvah sheyaleh. It's a mitzvah for him to come. So again, I write to Reb Chaim, is this and this the reason that you told me what you told me? The mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is a mitzvah d'oraisa that applies b'zman hazeh. It's a positive mitzvah that applies today. And this is his obligation. Kiruv is the greatest mitzvah in the world, but it's not a complete obligation. You don't have one of the Taryag saying, thou shalt find a small town USA, open up a shul and a school. It's beautiful when you do, but first one has to fulfill the obligations placed on his shoulders. Can you get up tomorrow morning and say, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I'm so sorry, I don't have time to put on tefillin, I'm involved in Kiruv today. I'm not going to keep next Shabbos because I'm involved in Kiruv. HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to laugh. You first have to fulfill those things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu said you must do, and then go find all the best, greatest, beautiful mitzvahs in the world. And Reb Chaim said, yes, that's the reason that he wrote what he wrote. There's many, many other shilas that I asked Reb Chaim, but it's getting late. One more question. Very interesting shaila. Person calls me from Chutz La'aretz. Listen to this. Am Yisrael Tzadikim. He says he's learning Maseches Yevamos and he's stuck on a very, very difficult toises. Very difficult. Yevamos is a hard Masechet. And he is stuck in a toises, a Maseches Yevamos. He doesn't understand it. So he said, you know what I did? He wanted to ask me if it's going to work. He said, I called my travel agent. This is before Corona time. This is when people actually traveled. He called his travel agent. He bought a ticket to Eretz Yisrael. For how many hours? He wants to come to Ben Gurion for 6 hours with his Gemara. As soon as he comes to Eretz Yisrael, we said the air makes you wiser. He's going to learn that Toshis. He's going to understand it really well. He's going to review it again and again, and then he turns around and goes back home. But he asked me, do I think it's going to work? If one comes here for a short time, a visit of a week, 2 weeks, 6 hours, do you get smarter from a short visit, or it's only a side benefit to somebody who lives in Eretz Yisrael? My friends, what do you say? Let's try to help this fellow. Is it going to help him? Do you get smarter from a short visit? You can unmute your mics if you want to try to answer this one.
I would say yes, because you fulfilled the mitzvah of coming to Israel. Doesn't matter for how long you're coming, but you're fulfilling the mitzvah now of coming to Israel.
Is there a mitzvah of dwelling in the land when one comes for a week vacation?
Well, I would say yes. He's come to Israel.
Do you have documentations to say that? You're asking now a very important halacha.
Yeah, but the mitzvah doesn't say how long he must stay there.
So when one comes to Eretz Yisrael for 2 hours, he turns around, goes back home, he fulfilled the mitzvah of Yishuv Eretz Yisrael?
Will there, now
Yeah.
I'm thinking if there would be any issue to go back.
I'm sorry, say it again?
I was thinking if there would be any issue to go back to Chutz La'aretz from Eretz Yisrael.
Is there what? I'm sorry?
If there would be any issue to go back to Chutz La'aretz from Eretz.
The issue, the prohibition to leave Eretz Yisrael is for one who lives here. He doesn't live here. He's coming as a tourist on vacation, so he doesn't have this issue. Aboisai, there's an amazing Reb Shlomo Kluger in Imre Shefer. Just a few weeks ago, we read Parshas Shelach. The spies come back, and we know what happened. So the Torah says, "Vayipol Moshe ve'Aaron al Pneihem." Moshe and Aaron. Vayipol al Pneihem fell down on their face. VeYoshua bin Nun veKalev ben Yefune min hatarim es haaretz karu bigdeihem. And Yeshua bin Nun and Kalev from those who toured the land, the spies, they tore their clothes. Asks Reb Shlomo Kluger 2 beautiful questions. Wait a second. Why are you telling me now that Yeshua bin Nun and Kalev are from the ones who toured the land? Don't I know this? You've been telling about this for a whole chapter. In chapter Yud Gimel, the whole chapter discusses this. So we know Yeshua and Kalev, we know they're the spies. Why do you have to repeat it again? They are min hatarim es haaretz, from those who toured the land. And more. They tore their clothes. Oh, wait a second, why are they tearing their clothes? Moshe and Aaron didn't tear any clothes. Moshe and Aaron did nefilas apayim, vayipol al pneihem. What's going on here? Says Reb Shlomo Kluger. When do you tear kriya? When do you rip your clothes? When there's an aver, when somebody dies, when he's a goner. Avelus, mourning. That's only after there is no chance of bringing him back. But as long as there's still hope, what do? You don't tear any clothes. You daven. What did Moshe and Aaron do? Nefilas apayim. That's davening. Moshe and Aaron are davening. Yeshua and Kalev are not. They rip kriya because they know there is no more hope. There is no chance. HaKadosh Baruch Hu will keep us here 40 years and everybody will die. Moshe and Aaron still didn't know this. How is that possible? How is that possible? Moshe and Aaron don't know something that Yeshua and Kalev knew? Yes. Because in Ksubis Daf Ayin Hey, Chazal say that when a Babylonian came to Eretz Yisrael, he is like 2 Israelis. Why? Because in Babel, they used to learn with tremendous depth. And Eretz Yisrael, they didn't use so much depth in their learning because they have the airspace that makes you wiser. Avira de Eretz Yisrael machkim, Rabat Akuf Nun Ches. So when a guy from Babel comes to Eretz Yisrael with his style of learning, the depth, and now he has the added benefit of the air that makes him wiser, is like 2. So Yeshua and Kalev toured the land for a short time. They weren't here for many years, just for a short visit. But now they're counted as 4 people. They're only 2, but they are counted as 4. They're smarter than Moshe and Aaron. So therefore, they know something that Moshe and Aaron don't know. You see from here that a short visit to Eretz Yisrael can make one wiser. But maybe we should reject this. Because Yeshua and Kalev came into Eretz Yisrael in order to conquer it and dwell in it permanently, and maybe that's why they became wiser. But no, I don't think so. Because, bottom line, they were in Eretz Yisrael for a short time, and the Mitzvah says that from the time you come into the land, you become wiser, because who says they will be able to fulfill their plans and to accomplish what they want? Who knows? Everything goes achar kavanas halev. Chazal say in Sanhedrin Kuvav, Rachmana liba ba, HaKadosh Baruch Hu wants your heart. And in Makos Yud, Chazal say, B'derech she'adam roitze leilech, ba molichin oiso. And the way you want to walk, you get special siyata d'shmaya to walk. However, why is it, or how did it become that this place, majestic place, makes one wiser? The Maharsha says, you know why it becomes, it's a special place that makes one wiser? Because It started when Moshe Rabbeinu looked at the land when HaKadosh Baruch Hu told him, Aleh el har ha'avarim hazeh, go to Har Nevo, ure'es Eretz Knan. You won't be able to go there. You won't be able to go there, but you'll be able to look there. And with his special eyes, when he looked at Eretz Yisrael, he made this place a very special place. And it should make people who come there wiser. According to that, what we said before is not going to work, because the spies came there before Moshe Rabbeinu ever looked at the land and made it special and made it a place that makes people wiser. So that's not going to help us. But there is a Sephona. In Bereshis Yud Aleph Pasuk Lamed Aleph, the Sephona is a different reason. Why is Eretz Yisrael a place that makes people wiser? Because in Eretz Yisrael, we learn in Zvachim Kuf Yud Gimel, the flood didn't come. It didn't rain here. And when the flood came all over the world, it wrecked the purity of the air. In Eretz Yisrael, the air wasn't damaged, and therefore Eretz Yisrael's air makes one wiser. As we said just a few minutes ago, there is a machlokes where the mitzvah Yishuv Eretz Yisrael is fulfilled when a person comes for a short visit. In Shalosh Tshuvas Chelkas Yankiv, Yerodei Siman Kuf Kaf Ches, he rejects the proof that the Maharit from the Rishonim brings, that one does not fulfill the mitzvah, and he maintains that one does. The Tashbetz, Siman Reish Mem Ches, Eif Kotten Yud Daled, as well holds that one fulfills the mitzvah, even for a short time. Shalosh Tshuvas Mishneh Halachos, Chelek Beis Benun Vav. And I think that's the pashtus of the Lashon of the Rambam. Hilchos Melachim Perek Hey Halacha Yud Aleph, the Rambam says, even if one walks 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael, he is Zoiche Lechaye Ha'olam Haba. He merits to go to the next world. It doesn't say in the Rambam that you have to be a resident of the country, even if you didn't merit to be buried here. One who walked 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael. So too, Chazal decree that one who goes to Chutz La'aretz becomes Tameh in the Tumas Eretz Ha'amim, even if you go there for 5 minutes. But we have a rule. Midah Toiva is 500 times greater than Midah Ra. So if you go to Chutz La'aretz, you become Tameh. If you come to Eretz Yisrael, you become pure. You know, it's similar. You go to a tanner. It doesn't smell so good. You go into the store without touching anything. You're just for a short visit. You're not going to smell so good when you leave. But if you go to a store that sells perfume, just for a short visit, you smell delicious. So therefore, it seems that when one comes to Eretz Yisrael, even for a short visit, hopefully, he does get wiser. But definitely, it's not the same like a person who comes to dwell in the land, who comes to sit here permanently. He will definitely become wiser, much, much wiser than that. I just want to end with Inyan de Yoima, Corona era, and many people ask, Lama, why? Why did this happen? Lama, a question on the past. Many people ask a question on the future. Ma yihiyeh, what's going to be? The answer for both is bitochon. How do I know? Lama, lamed mem hey. Why? Lama is numerical value 75. Lamed is 30, mem is 40, hey is 5, that's 75. Ma yihiyeh, what's going to be? Ma is mem hey, that's 45. Yihiyeh is 30, that's 75. Bitochon, 75 as well. Bet, tet, chet, vav, nun, 75 in Gematria. If one has questions on the Hanhaga of HaKadosh Baruch Hu in this world, he has to get stronger in Bitochon. Amazing medrash in Dvarim Rabban Parsha Hey Siman Ches. Listen to a language. Omar Rab Siman b'Shem Reb Yeshua ben Levi. Kol mi sheboteach b'HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Anyone who trusts HaKadosh Baruch Hu, zoiche lihiyot kayoytze boy. He will be like HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If this wasn't in the medrash, we wouldn't be allowed to say this. Minayin asks the medrash, where'd you get this from? Shneimar, a pasuk from Yirmiyah, Perek Yud Zayin, pasuk Zayin. Baruch HaGever asher yivtach b'Hashem v'haya Hashem mivtacho. But according to the Medrash, Baruch HaGever asher yivtach b'Hashem, blessed is the person who trusts in Hashem. V'haya Hashem, he will be like Hashem. Bitochon, bitochon, bitochon. Maybe that's why in Parshas Lech Lecha it says that when Avraham Avinu embarked on his journey, he was 75 when he left Haran. The Torah says he was 75. Who cares how old he was? What's the difference? Maybe this is an instruction for the time of Avraham Avinu, but for us, for all generations, to leave his house, his family, his friends, his birthplace. It's a tremendous nisayon. You have to take with you the smida of bitachon. If you want to be able to pass great tests and challenges that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has for us, you have to take the smida bitachon. 75. Avraham Avinu took the 75. He notes bitachon. This is how you embark on the journey called life. This is how you pass all the tests. You should get stronger in bitachon. We should all be, when I speak divrei chizuk, I'm talking to myself. You just, for whatever reason, happen to be there on the other side, listening. Bitachon, bitachon, bitachon. That's what it's all about. 75, bitachon, Imes Hashem. Soon we will find out. Lama, ma yihye, all the questions. When Mashiach arrives and tells us all the answers. Eshe Goyach again for participating. It's a tremendous fuss. Thank you all. Thank you, Arav Horowitz.